If you woke up tomorrow and a billionaire secretly wired $1 million into your account, but only if you followed a hidden set of rules for the next 30 days, would you even know what to do? Be honest. Most people wouldn't. And that's exactly why money slips through their hands. The rich aren't playing the same game you are. They know rules you've never even heard about, and today, I'm going to expose them. I remember sitting at a tiny kitchen table a few years ago, staring at a bank balance of less than $200. I was working hard, but every payday felt like pouring water into a leaking bucket. Maybe you felt that way too, juggling bills, side hustles, dreams, and still feeling broke. Then I picked up one of Robert Kiyosaki's books and something clicked. He wasn't talking about working harder. He was talking about learning the rules of the game. It felt like someone had turned on the lights in a dark room. The first hidden rule I stumbled on was this: money is not the goal, it's the tool. Most of us are taught from childhood to get a good job, save, retire. That's like being told to win at chess but only being shown how the pawns move. Rich people know that money itself is not the finish line. They see it as fuel for opportunities, freedom, and leverage. That's why you can hand someone a paycheck of $10,000 a month and 10 years later they're still broke. They were never taught how to use the money. I learned this the hard way. When I got my first decent freelance payment, $500 for a design job, I celebrated by upgrading my phone and eating out. Within a week, the money was gone. But one of my mentors told me, treat your income like seeds, not fruit. If you eat all the seeds, you'll never have a harvest. That one sentence shifted me from consumer thinking to investor thinking. That's a rule the wealthy live by instinctively. Another rule rich people know but no one tells you: the price of something isn't just the money you pay, it's the time, attention, and opportunity you lose. Robert Kiyosaki calls this understanding assets versus liabilities. You might think that shiny car is a status symbol, but if it locks up 5 years of monthly payments, rising insurance, and depreciation, you've actually bought a liability. On the flip side, that plain-looking rental property or small online business you start may not impress anyone on Instagram, but it can buy back your time. I remember a friend of mine who was making $3,000 a month but always broke. He drove a car worth more than his yearly income. Meanwhile, another friend quietly used a few $1,000s to buy camera equipment, built a wedding photography business on weekends, and 2 years later replaced his job. Same starting money, two totally different outcomes, because one knew the rule of assets versus liabilities. Here's another secret rule rich people know: skills compound faster than savings. Most people focus on squeezing pennies, but the wealthy obsess over multiplying knowledge. When Robert Kiyosaki lost everything early in his career, he didn't crawl back to safe paycheck. He went and learned sales, investing, and leadership. Those skills made him tens of millions later. When I finally stopped binge-watching Make Money Fast videos and instead spent $20 on a book about business writing, that skill helped me land clients, which then funded more learning. It's like interest on your knowledge. If you spend even 1 hour a day learning high-value skills, negotiating, marketing, investing, in 365 days you're a completely different person. That's another rule no one in school tells you. Here's a fourth rule they don't teach: money flows to those who solve bigger problems, not to those who work the longest hours. Think about it. The garbage collector might work harder physically than the tech entrepreneur, but the entrepreneur solves a problem for thousands or millions of people. That's why their income is exponentially different. Once you see this rule, you stop asking, how can I work more hours? And start asking, what valuable problem can I solve? I learned this when I undercharged for my design services. I thought clients were paying me for time. Then one day a business owner told me, Lucas, Your design increased our sales by $10,000. I realized I wasn't just pushing pixels, I was solving a business problem. That's when I doubled my rates and clients still said yes. That's what happens when you step into the solve bigger problems rule. A fifth unspoken rule: cash flow beats cash pile. Robert Kiyosaki talks about escaping the rat race. You can save for 30 years, but if your lifestyle depends entirely on your next paycheck, you're still trapped. Rich people focus on building streams of income that come in whether they wake up or not. It might start small, $100 a month from an online course, $200 from renting out equipment, dividends from stocks, but those streams add up and buy freedom. I saw this with my aunt. She was a schoolteacher for decades and saved faithfully. But the day she retired, her savings started shrinking. Meanwhile, a former colleague of hers who had bought 2 small apartments 20 years earlier now collects rent every month and travels. Same career path, different rules about cash flow. Another unwritten rule: the people you learn from matter more than the information itself. We're drowning in free advice online, but most of it comes from people who haven't done what they're teaching. Robert Kiyosaki often mentions his rich dad, a mentor who modeled the mindset of wealth. Find your own version of that. If you can't access them in person, read their books, watch their interviews, listen to their podcasts. Mentorship collapses the time it takes to learn. And there's a rule about fear, too. Rich people use fear as data, not as a stop sign. Most of us were raised to avoid mistakes, so we never invest, never start a side hustle, never negotiate. But wealthy people see mistakes as tuition. They calculate risk, start small, learn, adjust, and keep moving. That's why someone can lose everything and rebuild, while another person stays stuck forever. It's not luck, it's rules. One of my own scariest moments was when I used $200, basically my last spare cash, to buy a course on brand strategy. My hands were shaking. But that course helped me create a new service I could charge more for. That $200 returned itself in the first client project. Fear was data, it was telling me I was stepping into growth. Let me add one more invisible rule: environment beats willpower. If you're surrounded by spenders, you'll spend. If you're surrounded by learners, you'll learn. Rich people intentionally build networks where wealth thinking is normal. That's why they go to conferences, masterminds, charity events. You don't have to be in an exclusive club to start. Even changing your social media feed to people who think bigger can rewire your brain. When you stack all these rules together, you see why it can feel like the wealthy are playing a different game. Because they are. School taught you algebra, not assets. It taught you to memorize dates, not to manage cash flow. But you can unlearn and relearn. The moment you see these rules, you can start playing too. So here's my challenge to you. For the next 30 days, not forever, just 30 days, pick one of these rules and live it. Treat money as a tool, not the goal. Or focus on acquiring one high-value skill. Or build a tiny stream of cash flow. It doesn't have to be big. It just has to be a start. Because if you do nothing, nothing changes. But if you do even a little, everything changes. Imagine yourself a year from now. You've invested in your skills, built a small cash-flowing side hustle, learned to see assets versus liabilities, surrounded yourself with people who think bigger. You might still be in the same apartment, but your mindset is different. Your bank account is healthier. Opportunities start to find you. That's not fantasy, that's the math of new rules. And maybe the most powerful rule of all is this: wealth begins in the mind before it shows up in the bank. Robert Kiyosaki likes to say the rich don't work for money, they make money work for them. That starts with thinking differently. When you think like an owner, not a worker, when you see money as a seed, not a prize, when you're willing to learn, invest, and risk intelligently, you've already joined the wealthy mentally. The bank balance follows. So don't wait for someone to secretly wire you $1 million. The hidden rules are not locked in a vault, they're right here. The question is whether you'll apply them. Will you keep playing the game you were taught in school, or will you step onto the field the rich are playing on? Because once you do, you'll never see money, or your own potential, the same way again.